You were born in a kingdom that smells like gold and garlic. Not because you had any, of course. The gold stayed in the palace, and the garlic clung to your mother's hands. She worked in the royal kitchens, slicing onions and peeling potatoes until her fingers looked like old parchment. Your father was a soldier once. At least that's what he said before the drink erased his memory of which side he fought for. You grew up thin, fast, and too curious for your own good. You liked the idea of food more than food itself. The smell of roasted meat was enough to make your stomach hallucinate. When you were 10, you saw your first royal feast through a crack in the wall. Tables drowning in meat, saucers that dripped like melted jewels, deserts taller than your head. You thought, someday I'll eat like that. Cute. You had no idea that eating like that would come with a death wish attached. By 14, you'd learned how to dodge kitchen knives, flatter cooks, and steal crumbs without getting your fingers broken. That made you resourceful, a word the head chef used when he didn't want to say rat. The palace needed rats, especially the kind that didn't complain. The king had a problem, too many enemies, not enough trust. His food had become a weapon waiting to happen, and that's where you came in. You didn't apply, you were chosen. One morning, 2 guards pulled you out of bed, dragged you to the kitchen, and told you congratulations, you were going to be the royal taste tester. You smiled because you thought it sounded fancy. You thought maybe it came with better meals, a bed with a blanket, maybe a uniform. It did come with meals, just not the kind you wanted to finish. They started your training right away. Rule 1, the chef said, you taste before the king does. If you live, he eats. You laughed, nobody else did. The first day they gave you a bowl of soup. It smells fine, you said. The chef nodded. Good, now eat. You did. Then you spent the next 6 hours vomiting into a bucket while the doctor took notes. Not poison, just the king's idea of a joke. He liked to watch new testers suffer from nerves. It made him feel safe. Somehow, you were entertainment disguised as security. Every morning became a game of culinary Russian roulette. Meat pies that might be spiced with nightshade. Wine that might carry a hint of arsenic. Honey-glazed fruit that tasted just a little too metallic. You learned to tell the difference between cinnamon and cyanide faster than you learned to read. The king had his favorites: goose, liver, venison, and paranoia. You saw it in his eyes every time he lifted a spoon. He'd stare at you like a priest watching a sacrifice. Sometimes he'd even count. 1, 2, 3. If you were still breathing at 5, he'd grin and dig in. If you weren't, well, the kitchen had plenty of orphans. You began to develop what the royal physician called a survivor's palate. You could taste poison like Himalayas taste wine. Ah yes, you'd mutter. A vintage strychnine, slightly bitter on the back of the tongue. Pairs well with regret. The guards thought it was hilarious. You didn't. Nights were the worst. You'd lie awake in your little straw bed, stomach churning from whatever noble's paranoia you'd swallowed that day, wondering how many testers had died before you. No one kept count. The palace burned through them faster than it burned candles. The pay wasn't even yours. They sent half to your family in case you didn't wake up tomorrow. Comforting. The king liked to keep things unpredictable. Some days he'd make you taste his food in front of the entire court. The nobles would whisper bets, placing coins on how long you'd last. He looks pale today, one would say. Maybe this is the one. You'd smile through it all, pretending you were honored to die for a man who couldn't even remember your name. One afternoon, during a grand banquet, a dish arrived that smelled too sweet to be trusted. Lamb with pomegranate glaze. You tasted it, smiled, and told the king it was divine. Then your throat started closing. You didn't die, but the doctor said your tongue would never taste properly again. The king found that hilarious. Perfect, he said. Now you won't get too attached to the flavor. That night, you dreamed of food that didn't kill you. Bread without bitterness. Wine without suspicion. You woke up hungry and terrified. The two feelings had become twins inside your stomach. Weeks turned into months. You stopped flinching when they brought new dishes. Your body adapted. A little bit of poison every day became your breakfast. The doctor said your blood was thick with resistance. You liked to think of yourself as half immortal, half idiot. The queen was kinder than the king, which wasn't saying much. She once asked if you ever got tired of tasting danger. You told her only when it tastes the same. She didn't laugh. Maybe she understood. Maybe she was thinking about her own poisons. One evening, she slipped you an apple. From my garden, she said. You didn't eat it. Smart move. The next morning, her gardener was hanged for treason. Turns out, even kindness was toxic in the palace. You started noticing things, the subtle shifts in the kitchen, the whispers behind tapestries, the cook who suddenly disappeared after serving soup, the guard who wouldn't meet your eyes. You began to suspect that the food wasn't the only thing poisoned. The whole place was rotting from the inside out, and yet, you stayed. Because what else was there? Out there was famine. In here was danger wrapped in silk. You preferred predictable terror. By your 3rd year, your body had become an experiment. The alchemist tested antidotes on you. The priest called you blessed. The jester called you His Majesty's chew toy. Everyone had a name for you except your mother, who still sent letters you couldn't read, asking if you were safe. The cook said you were lucky to even have someone asking. You didn't feel lucky. One morning, a new chef arrived from a faraway land. Quiet man, sharp eyes, sharper knives. He brought spices no one had seen before. The king loved him instantly. You didn't trust him. To clean, to calm, to polite. The kind of man who'd smile while slipping something into the salt. The first meal he prepared was a golden stew that shimmered like sunlight. You tasted it, expecting the usual burn, but nothing happened. It was delicious, warm, rich, perfect. The king devoured it. For a moment you almost believed in peace. Until the next morning when he couldn't get out of bed. The castle erupted in panic. You were dragged from your room, beaten, accused. The chef vanished. The queen wept. And you, the royal poison sponge, were suddenly the prime suspect. You tried to explain that you'd eaten it too, that you were fine. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe you'd been dosed so many times that nothing could kill you anymore. The doctor confirmed it. Your body was a walking antidote. The king survived. Barely. He didn't thank you. He didn't even look at you. He just ordered that from now on, you taste everything, including his wife's kisses, his children's drinks, and his bathwater. Congratulations, you've been promoted. After your promotion, things got worse. You didn't think that was possible, but the palace had a way of proving you wrong every single day. You no longer just tasted food, now you were the royal insurance policy. The king trusted you more than his priest, which meant you lived a little longer than his priest. That's the kind of trust that kills slower. Every morning you'd taste the king's breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, teas, wines, perfumes, even the water used to wash his goblet. Sometimes, when he was feeling poetic, he'd make you lick his ring to be sure no assassin had hidden venom there. You did it. Of course you did. You didn't have a choice. You were no longer a servant, you were a filter, a human sieve. You started losing your sense of smell first. Too many toxins, too many fumes. Then your tongue began to dull, the edges of flavor turning to static. The doctor called it occupational erosion. The king called it loyalty. You called it death in slow motion. He loved to entertain guests from distant lands, merchants, generals, priests, and every single one of them wanted to see the famous tester. They'd clap when you swallowed something first and didn't fall over. A walking miracle, they called you. You didn't feel like one, more like a shield that forgot what it was protecting. One night, during a banquet celebrating peace with a rival kingdom, you were ordered to taste the wine before anyone else. A crimson vintage from the enemy's own vineyard. You took a sip, waited. The hall was silent. Then you smiled, raised a glass, and said, "It's safe." Everyone laughed, cheered, drank. An hour later, 20 nobles were vomiting blood. You weren't. The doctor couldn't explain it. The king accused you, the queen defended you. For the first time in years, someone said your name out loud, though it sounded like a curse. You spent 3 days in a dungeon, waiting for an execution that never came. Turns out, the poison had been meant for you, not the king. Apparently, surviving made people jealous. When they released you, you weren't the same. Something inside had rotted. Not your body, that part was already ruined, but your trust, your fear, your sense of being human. You'd seen too many corpses carried out through the kitchen door, their lips blue, their plates still full. You'd started to dream in colors of bile and silver. You began noticing details others missed. The tremor in the steward's hand, the way the queen's maid hesitated before tasting her tea, the faint metallic smell from the king's cup. You realized the poison wasn't just in the food, it was in the air, the words, the looks. Everyone in the palace was tasting death in their own way. You just happened to do it professionally. One morning the alchemist summoned you. He looked thrilled, which was never good news. He said your blood could neutralize most known poisons, that you were, in essence, a medical wonder. You asked if that meant freedom. He laughed until he cried. Then he drew another vial of your blood. They started experimenting on you. Small doses of new toxins, new antidotes, new ways to die without dying. You became less a man, more a laboratory with legs. The alchemist said you'd live forever if they kept feeding you right. You wondered what right meant in a palace that seasoned everything with treachery. Years passed. The king grew older, fatter, meaner. His enemies multiplied faster than his teeth could rot. Every feast was a potential war crime. You were still there, sitting behind him, tasting every dish with a blank stare. The courtiers joked that you were part of the furniture now, the royal poison chair. Then one day, he asked something different. Would you die for me? You said you already had. Many times he smiled, patted your shoulder, and said, good. Then one more won't hurt. The next morning, they brought out a silver platter covered with a cloth. The chef's hands were trembling. The smell underneath was sweet, floral, and suspiciously peaceful. You tasted a spoonful. The taste was nothing. No burn, no bitterness, just calm. To calm. You knew immediately it was hemlock. You looked at the king, he looked at you. Both of you understood. This wasn't a test. This was the final act. Someone had poisoned the king again, but this time, he wanted to be sure it worked. And if it didn't, you'd die instead. Win-win, in his mind. You swallowed the rest. Out of habit, out of defiance, out of exhaustion. You waited. Nothing. Your heart kept beating. The king's didn't. The hall went silent. The physician ran. The guards froze. The queen just stared at you, a look of horror or maybe admiration. You didn't know. You couldn't taste feelings anymore. That night, they crowned the king's eldest son. He was worse, younger, crueler, more imaginative. He thought the idea of a human poison detector was old-fashioned. He wanted innovation. You'll be our taster and our tester, he said. You'll sample new poisons so we can perfect them. Progress, he called it. Torture, you called it. Soon the alchemist was back, feeding you colored liquids that burned your veins. Your body adapted, again and again, until adaptation became the only thing you were good at. You stopped aging, or maybe you just stopped noticing. The years blurred together like spilled wine. The palace changed kings 3 times. You stayed. Generations passed. New cooks, new queens, new flavors, same routine. You outlived them all, not by luck, but by chemistry. You started to wonder if you'd become what they always feared, the poison itself, the immortal toxin walking among them. Servants avoided your shadow. Cats hissed when you passed. Even your reflection began to fade, as if the mirror refused to acknowledge you. One evening, centuries or maybe decades later, the latest king, young and reckless, called you to dine beside him. You've served this crown faithfully, he said. You deserve a final meal. You didn't correct him, you just nodded. He poured 2 cups of wine. To loyalty, he said. You drank. Of course you did. And for the first time in your life, you felt it warmth. Not the sting of poison, not the numbness of antidote, just warmth. You smiled. The king didn't. He was already dead. You laughed, quietly, not out of joy, but out of irony. After all these years, death had impeccable timing. You stood, steady as ever, while chaos erupted around you. They called you a demon, a witch, a curse. Maybe they were right. You walked out of the palace that night, past the kitchens, past the guards, past the fields where your mother once worked. The moon followed you like a witness that had seen too much. You never tasted anything again. Not hunger, not fear, not life. Just the faint aftertaste of poison and power, the flavor of kings. And somewhere, deep in the royal kitchens, a boy scrubbed pots and whispered to himself, someday, I'll eat like that.